Welcome to episode 119 of Convos in the Pedicab. I'm here with my friend Jamie Hammond, otherwise known as Documenting ATX on Twitter. Yep. He is you're a documentary film. Are you
turning into a mostly what we're doing right now is just documenting pretty much police, fire, and the homelessness issues here in Austin. We're going around making films about that.
So you're getting pretty well known, at least on Twitter in Austin, by documenting the homeless people and what's going on.
Yeah, pretty much. Mm-hmm.
What made you want to do that?
So last year, I haven't really been doing it for long. Last year, actually it was about this time last year, I was driving up 183 and pretty much coming right around Breaker, and I ended up seeing some kids come out of the woods, and my wife and I had just adopted a little boy. And so seeing these kids come out of the woods, and I could see that there was a bunch of junk, kind of right there at the edge. I went and did what I was going to do, and on my way back, I stopped by there, walked into the wooded area, and it was just this huge homeless camp. And I started taking some pictures and started doing some video. And, man, I put that on Twitter, and next thing you know, I was on Fox News a week later.
So you said this might be a good thing to continue doing.
Yeah. Once I saw it, started looking for it, if you're not really looking for it, you see the homeless on the street, but you don't see the homeless in the woods and in the Greenbelt. It's a much bigger problem than what most Austinites think that it is, for sure.
Okay, and so what exactly do you do? Because I've seen some of your films. I've seen some of what you put out. Obviously, the conditions are a cause for concern.
Right.
But it also does, I would assume, take a certain amount of tact and skill to be able to film homeless people.
It does.
On an everyday basis.
So, here recently, we're starting to bring in more in donations and things like that. So we have more of a budget to work with. And so, we're able to actually try to, help these folks more than just going out and filming them. A lot of times if I'm going to go into a camp, I'll take and hand out gift cards, cigarettes, money. It just depends. It keeps us safe, and it helps them out a little bit too. But pretty much our whole purpose right now is to not only force the city into acknowledging the problem, but we're also getting more towards a services side where we're actually, we're in the camps with these people. We talk to them. We develop relationships with them. We try to help them get on services. We try to help them, hook up with the people that they need to hook up with. It's basically turning more into, instead of just a straight documenting, more of a humanitarian, effort.
Well, that's good. That's actually a really good thing.
Yeah.
The city knows about the homeless problem.
They do.
When you're saying, "Oh, we got to bring attention to this," no, they're paying attention, and if anything, they might be paying too much attention to it because they look at the homeless and they see dollar signs.
It's there's Clint Rary, Clint and Christina Rary.
Yeah.
They call it the homeless and industrial complex, and it couldn't be more right because you get all these NGOs and the nonprofits here in Austin. They're making a killing. It's just like with Echo. They just did their point-in-time count a week ago or so. And we're out in these camps with these people talking to them. We haven't ran into too many people that actually got counted. So I'm not 100% certain on how accurate that's going to be, but, they make a lot of money doing it.
There's a lot of money involved.
A lot. Millions and millions and millions.
Well, the city a couple years ago passed something basically decriminalizing all forms of camping.
Right.
And they did that because they said, well, everyone's complaining about the homeless, so we're not going to punish them because they're suffering enough and they need services. And then they just decriminalized it. And what happened, to nobody's surprise, is that it just multiplied and made the homeless problem exponentially worse.
Yeah, and and what it also did, so once they decriminalized it, these folks moved onto the sidewalks, pretty much any area that was flat that they could sleep on. And most Austinites have seen it. And then the big problem is when they decriminalized, or when they criminalized it again, it pushed them back into the woods. So now there's all these people that moved in here in the time that it was decriminalized. It was known that it's very easy to live as a homeless person in Austin. So you get a lot of people moving in. Now they're here and they've been pushed off into the woods.
Yeah, like including home. If you factor in the homeless, Austin probably still is the fastest growing city in the
For
world.
sure,
Because
yeah.
homeless people from all over Texas are going to go to Austin because of these rules.
Yeah, and
And then from like every other like neighboring state, if if you're homeless in Arkansas, if you're homeless in Oklahoma,
Right.
if you're homeless in New Mexico, where do you think the people in those councils are sending their homeless? Probably to the closest area they can find that allows it. And Austin just seems like a really convenient place to just send your homeless.
I've heard rumors, and I don't have any proof of it, but I've heard rumors that people are being sent
I'm
here.
speculating that's what could be happening.
I've heard the stories.
Like if I were in charge of a major city and there was a problem with homelessness, or there were some homeless people that I didn't like, especially, and you notice that the homeless people that come into Austin, especially like these past few years since that law got changed, have been a lot worse than what the homeless used to be like.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if I'm the mayor, or if I'm like a city council member, or if I'm a judge, or if I'm somebody important, in a city that doesn't allow that stuff, and there are certain homeless people or certain people in general that are giving me
For sure.
more problems than I want to deal with.
Right.
Where do you think I'm going to send them?
Probably to the most convenient place that you can that they'll want to stay.
And where is that place?
That would be right
Right
here
here
Austin.
in Austin, Texas.
Everybody knows Austin for being laid back. Keep Austin weird vibe.
Yeah, which is a good thing. I think that's a good
for
thing
sure.
that we have.
It's great. But
it comes with responsibilities.
Yeah, and like I said, I've heard stories. I don't have any proof. I've just heard the stories. I've heard it from the homeless people themselves that, people are, they move here simply because of how easy it is to be homeless in this city. And it's very easy. Lots of services.
How do they afford to move here?
It's a good question.
When you talk about the homeless, they're down on their luck. They're penniless. They don't have any money. So if you don't have any money and you're penniless, like how do you afford to just get up and just
So it's interesting
go move somewhere?
With the homeless folks. They're able to move around very easily. They move so much. They'll spend summers in a cooler part of the country, and then they move around the country, according to seasons, and it just they never stay in one spot, and so they move around a lot. There's a lot of money out there. I mean, when you see these people on the street corners, and they have their hand out for money, which is, you can't fault them for that. They're making a lot of money. They're making a lot of money just standing on the corner, what they call flying a sign.
I mean, some are.
Yeah.
Some do, some don't. So when you talk to the people at the camps, do they ever tell you about how much they make?
No, not really. I mean, it's tough. I mean, you can get some of these people the hard thing about when you're working with these people in the camps is honesty. It's hard to know if what you're being told is the truth or what's not the truth. So
why do you think that is?
A lot of these guys, I don't know. It's a hard question to answer. They, the more that, I guess what I'm trying to get at is the more, I guess, it's just, I don't know. I don't know if it has something to do with the drugs or if it has something to do with, being penniless and having your hand out and being hungry, or, it's just kind of like the folks that you see on the corner, with the sign out, and somebody comes up and hands them a plate of food. That plate of food's going to go right to the garbage. They're not going to eat it.
Maybe. Because there was a mayor in some city in Colorado who went homeless undercover for a few weeks, and he gained weight from being homeless because people were
That's
just
interesting.
Because everybody would just give them their extra food all the time.
Well, when I very first came to Austin, it's about, 10, 11 years ago, I was homeless here for about 6 months.
Really?
Yep.
But you told me that you used to be a cop.
Yep, I worked for the Collin County Sheriff's Office back in the early 2000s.
All right, and then how did you go from being a cop to being homeless?
So I was married at that point, and about 2011, 2012, we ended up getting a divorce.
All right.
And I wanted to start over. I'm originally from Dallas, Texas.
Okay.
I grew up in a little town called McKinney. Not a very big town, just north of Dallas.
I've spoken at their school board once.
Yeah, I've watched the video. It's
Yeah.
great. Yeah. So that's where I grew up
Yeah,
at,
right.
McKinney. And so all my family's still up there. I'm literally, out of my family, the only one in South Texas right
Okay.
now. So, yeah, and ended up getting a divorce, and, this is where I ended up. And, I didn't have the trouble that most homeless people have. Most of these homeless folks, there's a reason that they're homeless, whether it be mental health issues or, substance abuse, alcoholism. There's a reason that they're homeless. So, and that's the problem with the city of Austin and their approach right now is they have a housing first initiative, which they're taking people out of these camps, moving them into housing, and they're back on the streets within 2 weeks because they're not getting any services to help them with those issues. And
do they still have their house?
No. So what I'm talking about more is I guess you call them the homeless hotels.
Yeah.
Where they move them, they put them in there, they get them into the system. But that's all they do. They don't give them any kind of services, any kind of help. They just, they move them in there, and that's pretty much it. They just throw them in the system. And these folks are going to be back on the street. Normally what we see is about 2 weeks. They'll stay in the housing, but they're back on the street.
What are they doing in the housing?
It's a good question.
Like, are they trying to find a job? Are there people watching them and helping to monitor like what they're doing?
They have roles,
or is it kind of like, hey, you're in this hotel and we just did our part to house the homeless, and now just go smoke all the crack you want, buddy.
They have roles.
I just want to know like what's happening.
They have roles for sure about where they're staying. If there's no, I'm not 100% certain on what the exact requirements are for finding a job or but I do know that when it comes to services, when it comes to classes on how to manage money or whatever you can't put somebody in a house and think that solves the homeless problem. There's a reason that people are homeless, and with the city they're not getting any of that help to get to solve the problem that made them homeless in the first place.
Well, of course, because if the problem gets solved, then a lot of money dries up.
A lot of money. NGOs, they don't want that. There's some. I don't want to blanketly throw shade on every nonprofit in the city, because there's a lot of them that are actually trying their best to help. But there's a lot that depend on that money to operate, and if you solved homelessness, then they would not be around.
Yeah, and also your taxes go up. If you're a small business owner, all your expenses go up. And then, if you're a big developer and you want to move in here because you see the growth, while, if a bunch of regular people and small business owners are struggling to get by with the taxes,
right.
They might sell their extremely valuable piece of property for less. Now you're going to get that valuable piece of property, and because you have political connections, you're not going to have to pay the same tax rate.
Yeah.
So I mean, there's a lot of that stuff also happens too, and it's
a lot of
problem.
A lot of what your average person does not see is, and this is kind of where we came in. They don't see the conditions of the green space. Austin's always been known for its green spaces. The green belts, it's it's natural springs, and they're being the green belts. Pretty much every green belt in Austin is you would be shocked if you walked off into one. Not only could it be dangerous, but it is completely filthy. I've found on the Williamson Creek Greenbelt, just walking in right at the front entrance, a bag of meth, and I've got that video on my YouTube channel. Big bag of meth right on the trail. And I don't know, my kids, if I was walking with them, they would pick it up, and it's dangerous, very dangerous.
Yeah, and pre 2019, they always said, oh, well, the homeless are just going to be hidden in the woods. They were, but not to this magnitude.
No, it's a lot worse now. And that's kind of where it comes, where we come in. The city, they are paying attention to the problem, but they're not actually telling the whole truth.
But what do you do with that many homeless?
That's that's a hard one. I mean, so when you look at how much money that the taxpayers are spending on this issue, and you have, let's say, we were invited not too long ago, back the 1st of December, down to tour Haven for Hope in San Antonio, which is the main place down there, kind of like Echo is here.
Right, but San Antonio also has a big homeless problem too.
They do, but Haven for Hope, in that model, they built that place for, I believe it was just a little over $1 million, and they serve a lot of homeless folks in there, and that's something that we don't have here. We have the Arch, we have the Salvation Army, but what other actual shelters do we have other than that and the homeless hotels that they bought? But there's 300 million sitting in city coffers right now, earmarked for the homeless issue.
And nobody really knows where that money gets spent. I remember in 2021, there was like 40 out of the $70 million that were allocated for homelessness were totally unaccounted for. And this is when they were trying to vote on banning the camping ban, on reinstating the camping ban. And I talked to like Ann Howard and a couple of other people about this. And I just said, look, here's the thing, right? Like, nobody wants to punish people for being homeless or any of that stuff, and everybody recognizes that and wants to help. But when half of your massive budget being allocated towards homelessness is unaccounted for, and you only see the homeless population growing while small businesses are struggling as a result of COVID and lockdowns.
Yep.
I mean, what do you think is going to happen?
It's
and that was kind of like the gist of it.
And when you ask the city, where this money is at, they can't account for it. They will not do an audit. They say an audit, it's too big of a problem. You can't audit this. There's no accountability. They still, to this day, I can't remember the exact number, but I think it was somewhere around 275 million that they can't really account for at this point. And when you ask the city, I'm trying to, I know her last name is Gray. She's the homeless czar here in Austin. She can't answer. She will not answer that question of where that money has went to.
I should just go to the city council meetings and just like every meeting, I should find an agenda and just ask for money, and just say that I run some fake charity and just ask for like
it probably wouldn't be hard.
Yeah,
honestly, it probably wouldn't be
see
hard
what they
at all.
tell me and just make fun of the whole thing about it.
And that's the thing, I saw a report not long ago. I was on KXAN. I was on they interviewed me along with Miss Gray, and she was talking in that interview about that they have these NGOs that they're actually working with to bring them up to where they can get funding from the city. And that's just it. They're actually they're invested in these NGOs. They're bringing these companies up when they're new, getting them to where they need to be to actually get funding from the city. So those NGOs, who do you think that their main, the people that they're trying to make the happiest is the city. It goes back to what you were saying. If you solved homelessness, the money would dry up. And it's kind of like with the Housing First initiative that the city does. There's a requirement. The city, and I'm not sure what the exact number is, but they get a lot of federal funding for homelessness.
A lot.
If they did not use the Housing First initiative, that model, they would not get that money. That comes from the federal government. So their hands are kind of tied on that. They have to use that model, but at the same time, they could be providing services. They could be doing stuff to actually get these people off the street, actually help them with their substance abuse, mental their mental issues, and there's a lot of them.
What if you're homeless with a substance abuse problem and you want to get help? What is the process like?
There is not a process at this point.
Really? So if I'm addicted to methamphetamines, hypothetically, and I'm sleeping under a bridge and I can't do it anymore, I want to get help, I want to get clean, who do I talk to? What do I do?
You could go to Echo, or you could go to some of the main, NGOs that's here, in the city, and ask for help. Get into the process. But there's weight limits. There's wait times to actually start getting, into housing. But your best bet would be going to the state and trying to get into a rehab like Seneca or in Waco. There's really not.
So
a good
there's
answer
not
for
even
that.
very many. So instead of building rehab facilities, because the homeless people actually need help, they're just building housing for them with no accountability for whether or not they
it's kind of like with the
goals.
hotels that they bought, like Candlewood. They bought these hotels, and with the Hill Initiative, Miss Gray, when I was on the news with her, was talking about they housed 48 people in a year's time, and that's not a very good number.
No, keep talking. It's fine.
Yeah, that's not a very good number. They don't have a very good success rate. They don't want the public to know that how big the problem is. And that's why I think, Dash, which is, our group, has gotten so popular, is because people see the issues. We're out all the time filming this stuff, and video doesn't lie. And people are shocked when they see it. My presence on Twitter has, just in 6 months has
tripled or something,
up.
right?
Yeah. It's more than tripled. I went from when I very first started doing this, I had somewhere around 100 followers. Now I'm 2,000, a little over 2,000.
So it's like 10, it's 20x almost.
And with YouTube in particular,
a lot of hours.
Yeah, I started uploading videos to YouTube in December, I think it was. And I mean, we're already at over 4,000 hours watched, and it's a big issue, and people want to see it. People are very interested in it, and it's like I said, when I very first posted that video to the internet, to Twitter, Fox News was calling within a week. Radio stations were calling. It was insane how much of an impact that one video had. And it had a lot to do with Steve Adler at the time saying that, we're going to solve homelessness within 2 or 3 years. I forget what he said now, 2 or 3 years. We're going to solve homelessness here in Austin. Every interview that I've done, that I did back then, they started off the interview with that soundbite and asked for a response to it.
Well, anytime a politician tells you that they're going to solve something, you need to run away as fast as you can.
They made this problem a lot worse. When they took back the camping ban, it opened the floodgates. And then, Save Austin Now was able to get it put back on the ballot.
Which is good, but the problem is that it's too little too late, because now where are these homeless people going to go?
Exactly.
And you also have a permissive DA who isn't going to prosecute. You have a city council that, and listen, man, like nobody should be walking around bootlicking law enforcement, even though you used to be I don't think.
I don't believe
that's not
that
healthy.
Either. No,
you shouldn't do that.
No, for sure. No.
Right? You shouldn't be backing the blue universally. You
right.
should, there's a healthy respect for law enforcement, I believe.
There is.
But what you have right now is like, a city council that shows almost a blatant disregard for law enforcement.
Yeah.
Which is like the opposite. Yeah, which is the opposite side of the pendulum. And then you have a district attorney that is extremely radical and does not want to prosecute anybody unless you go into a grocery store without a mask on or something like that. So you have these two factors. You have a mushrooming homeless population because of you're in a warm weather state. Austin's always had a bit of a problem with it, and then you have these permissive policies in conjunction. So naturally you're going to see a flood of homeless people, not to mention lockdowns and everything that cause people to fall back into certain addictions.
And when, I have a proton mill that I use that I post publicly, and I've had officers reach out to me, and what they all pretty much say the same thing, which is there's an official policy here in Austin that that they leave the homeless alone. They do not have, support from their higher ups. They don't have support from the lieutenants, the captains, on up the chain. So there's an official policy that they're going to pretty much leave the homeless alone at this point.
Yeah. And, who would blame them, considering?
Well, they get no support.
Also, years ago, it wasn't uncommon to see like 5 cops just harassing one homeless guy for being on a bench.
Right.
And because of that, it led to what you see now.
Right. Yep. It was a problem.
And that was a problem too, right? Like the way the cops used to treat the homeless was not okay. And in the beginning, I kind of was on the team of, hey, maybe you shouldn't criminalize homelessness. And the reason I was on that team is because you would see 7 police officers swarming one homeless guy who looked totally harmless, and it just looked like bullying.
Yeah, it was bad.
And I really didn't like that, and I think a lot of people felt that way, and so it led to the camping ban getting removed.
Well, at the same time,
Jamie, does that make sense? Like, I think that that all kind of led to it.
Yeah, it was a build-up, but I think it was an overreaction.
I agree with you. A huge overreaction.
It was more of a, when you look at the politics of the day, it was more of a lefty reaction or a liberal reaction. And the thing is, last week we had the huge ice storm, trees falling because of ice. Is it better to leave the homeless in these green belts? There's warming centers that are open, yeah, but the problem is the buses stopped running at the same time, so there was nobody taking anybody to the warming centers. So these folks are stuck in the woods with trees falling. It's below freezing. Is that more humane? That's my question. I mean, it seems to me that the response right now is...
Were there any nonprofits that were going in there and helping to
not to my knowledge.
Really?
So we're the only ones that really go into the green
and
belts.
The DSA. So none of the guys in like the DSA who say, "Hey, donate your clothes to help the homeless and do this and do that and don't criminalize poverty." Like nobody in the don't criminalize poverty crowd was going into the Greenbelt to try to like drive them to warming centers.
Not to my knowledge.
Really?
No. So Twitter here in Austin is a good litmus test for these nonprofits, and it seems that we're the only ones that was pushing for people to go, the city to actually walk into the green belts themselves and let these people know how to get to the warming center, how to sign up, because there's a whole process to even get registered for it. There was nobody going in. You can go right now into the green belts, ask these folks, when's the last time you've seen anybody from the city, or when's the last time anybody's been here to offer you services? They'll tell you that they don't ever see anybody, ever.
And did they ever see anybody offering them services when they were allowed to camp in the street?
I've never really asked that question.
That'd be interesting to ask.
I've never asked that question.
Have you made any friends with anybody?
Yeah. So there's one guy that I met back in the very beginning. His name is Henry. He lived the Williamson Creek Greenbelt where Stastny and 35 is at. That particular Greenbelt right there was it was a lot different at one point. There wasn't. Getting kind of bad, ain't it?
Yeah, it's getting bad.
Yeah, let's.
So we're still recording. All right. So where were we?
I was talking about the green belt.
And then Gary said that that's okay, right, to keep it.
Yeah, if you turn that, it's just an easy to see if it's framed,
right?
Right?
This one's mine. This one's
Got it. How does that look?
Let's see if everything is on. You're good. Yeah. Okay.
Does that look all right? Framed
Looks
right?
great. Yeah.
Okay.
All right. So.
Yeah, so the Williamson Creek Greenbelt, you'd asked if I had made any friends, and for sure, I've made friends and developed relationships. There's a guy in particular, his name is Henry. He's an older fella, lives down on the Williamson Creek Greenbelt, and that part of the Greenbelt was a lot different than most of your homeless camps in this area. And the reason why is they kept it clean. They kept that place. It almost looked like a little... like subdivision. They had their own little corners, everybody that lived there's one main trail, and they kept it clean. They would hump out all of their trash, all of their garbage. They would not, keep it in the area and just let it build up. But we were just out there, I don't know, week and a half, 2 weeks ago, and it's completely changed. Henry, it's kind of sad with Henry. He ended up in jail. He was with a guy that did some bad things, and he got caught up in it. So
what happened?
This is from what I understand. He was with a guy that ended up robbing another guy, and because he was with him, and I don't know if Henry was involved with it or not. I mean, Henry never seemed like the kind of guy that would rob somebody.
How old is Henry?
I think he's probably pushing 60. He's a pretty old guy. Yeah, we were out there working with Henry. We've known Henry a long time.
How long?
Probably now about 6-7 months.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, and I know that doesn't seem like a long time, but, when you're trying to help keep somebody warm, trying to, keep them fed, it's a long time. And Henry, he had a phone, so I was able to keep in contact with him that way. And the Texan did an article, and Henry was in that article with me. And, it's hard to not develop relationships with these people, especially in the camps where people pretty much stay put. That's why that Williamson Creek Greenbelt camp, and there's different segments of that camp, and I'm specifically talking about the one that's on Stastny and 35. They stayed there. Once they moved in, it was almost like they built a home there. And yeah, it's in the Greenbelts, but they kept the place nice. They took out their trash. They didn't allow people coming in that was doing a whole lot of drugs. They wouldn't, they wouldn't let violence in.
Wait, the people in that camp?
Yeah, they
police themselves.
Yeah, 100%.
What in Williamson? Okay, so are they still around, or are they?
Yep. Yeah, most of them are still out there. Henry doesn't live there anymore. Like I said, we were out there.
How did they? So if they're policing themselves and they're becoming their own little community, why are they still homeless? Like you would think that they'd be like able to build themselves up to like, get each other jobs or do something along those lines.
So if you go look on my YouTube page, you'll see some videos of of this particular camp that I'm talking about, and you'll see that they have taken pallets. They built, foundations for their tents. They've built, there's one guy that took pallets and he's built a whole little home. I mean, they built things out there. It's kind of ingenious. The Greenbelt out there is kind of in a bowl. So, it's to get up to where like Lowe's and the Fiesta, there's a big wall. They built a trolley system that has a metal cable that goes from the top of that all the way to the bottom, and they have a cart on it. That's how they get their stuff inside. It's pretty interesting. I got to take you out there.
I kind of want to see this. This is fascinating.
It's very interesting.
Do any of these guys like have jobs?
Not that I know of, no.
Because,
no.
I mean, look, I think it's good that you can build a self-sustaining community.
Yeah.
Right? I think that's all a great thing. But there's also, like, places for where these communities should be built.
Yep.
And, like, I don't know, maybe at a Greenbelt in a major city where it's insanely expensive to live here and there's a lot of – and it's becoming a business hub. Like, maybe that's not the place to do that. Like, maybe you do that, like, in an area that just, like, in kind of an isolated, like, wooded area – along like a back road that hasn't been developed by housing. Yeah,
I think
maybe something like that's better.
I think the city left them alone this whole time, pretty much because they kept the place so nice. The cops hardly ever had to go out there. I think.
How many people are in that community?
Let's see. There's probably 5 or 6 actual camps that's established and been there a while.
Okay, but how many tents per camp?
1. I mean, it's just I said, if you walk down the trail. If you know kind of what the Greenbelts look like, there's just a trail that runs through. They actually there's one guy out there he's got a mailbox.
He has a mailbox.
And a front gate. Yeah, they built a whole little community in there. Henry ended up getting burned about 6 months ago. This was before we met him because they had a meth head that had moved in there, and he was stealing copper at night, bringing it back there, and he would set it on fire to burn the coating off. That way he could go sell the copper. And Henry ended up trying to put that out because, it could burn down the Greenbelt for real. And ended up getting his legs pretty burnt doing that, trying to get that put out. And they moved that guy out very quickly. They wouldn't let him stay there anymore. They policed themselves pretty well there. So
well, that's a good thing, I guess.
Yeah, it's just.
Are there other communities like that?
Not like that. Not to where they take care of the area.
If you're gonna be by a Greenbelt, because I've seen some of those videos, and it looks gross. Like, especially it's a city that prides itself on climate change and all this stuff, and meanwhile you see total filth in like the most ecologically sensitive areas. Well, it just seems really odd, right?
And nothing, like to say, nothing lasts forever. And that particular part of the Greenbelt has went downhill. The last time we were out there, it's kind of gone downhill. It's nasty. The camps are empty, and I don't know if it's because it's wintertime here and people have moved to other places, but it's turned nasty. I mean, the camps it looks just like any other homeless camp at this point. And that's like I said, it's pretty much the only one in Austin that operated that way. The rest of them, people are in and out so much. And these homeless folks in Austin, these camps, they move around kind of like the tides. You can see you'll see one guy in this camp this week, and then you'll catch him in a camp on the other side of town next week. They just move around kind of like the tides do. It's interesting.
Yeah, that is really interesting. So, what happened to Henry? Let's get back to that.
Yeah, he's in jail now. He's waiting on. You can look up online on what's going on, and he's got a pretty big bond. And I'm assuming he'll probably be there until he goes to court. Yeah. Big bond.
He's accused of robbing people or one person or what?
The story that so there's a guy that lives out there on the Williamson Creek Greenbelt. He goes by the name of Smurf. And he was telling us the story about what happened. And apparently some guy had come to help them. They got in his truck and robbed him. That's the story we got. Or the guy that was with Henry and had ended up robbing him. And I'm not sure. Like I said, I don't know Henry that well. I know his last name is Johnson. I kind of know where he's from. We were out there one weekend when he found out his dad had died. You can't help but get emotionally involved with these people and start caring about them in a way.
Yeah.
And we don't want to see anybody suffer. That's kind of the whole point of this, is we don't want to see anybody suffer. And that's how this kind of turned from more of just documenting the issue into more of a humanitarian issue. We try to help as much as we can.
What do you do to help them?
Trying to help, we're in the camps with people. If somebody is wanting services, they want to know how, we try to get them hooked up with services. We try to, find a way we're going to be starting, taking computers into the camps with us. That way people can start signing up for services.
But they need to still connect to an outlet.
Yeah, and that's the problem, is they don't have ways to connect with these services. You could
do tablets. You could do like wireless
exactly.
tablets.
They don't have these nonprofits. They don't have anybody going into these homeless camps to sign people up to try to help people. They don't have the I don't know if it's that they don't have the ability to do it, or I'm going to tell you, it's scary. It can be scary. I've got, my friend Tim's kept me out of a lot of trouble in these homeless camps, and we still get into trouble. We got attacked by dogs, I don't know, a month ago or so. There was, some dogs that was in a homeless camp that came and got us twice in one visit.
Did you have to go to a doctor and get a rabies?
No. I got nipped. I think Tim got nipped a little bit, but and then I think it was last weekend. We were over on the Bolden Creek, right by Barton Springs and Lamar, and I ended up paying a guy. I can't remember if it was $40 or $60. We were going to go through and film their camp, and as soon as I gave him the money, he split off away from us, and we were pretty sure we were going to get robbed, so we didn't go back in there. And I mean, they're just, these people get mad when they see the camera, and not all of them. Not all of them. Yeah.
Well, it's volatile.
Yeah, and most of them.
You also have with the drugs and the substance. What if you're, you could be higher, you could be hallucinating, and you see a camera, or you could have some schizophrenia, and you see that, and you could just flip out just because you see something new.
And it's. We try to ask people. We don't film faces, for one. We don't put anybody on the internet. We don't, unless they've told us that we can actually use the camera and film them.
Yeah.
And so most of the people that we're filming, they know we're filming. I have a lot of interviews on my YouTube channel with these folks, and we'll try to sit down and talk to them and get their story. But there's just some people that they see, I wear a body camera when we go in because it does get volatile, and I want a record of what's happened. So I wear a GoPro, in addition to the camera that I use, and it can get a little tense. So I can understand why, a lot of these NGOs, I can understand why they don't really want to go into these camps. It's not really safe.
Yeah, but if that's the case, then maybe they should restructure or rethink how they go about, addressing the homeless issue. Because if they're not safe, if they don't feel safe talking to the homeless,
well, I don't think it's.
But then they want to create policies that make it easier for homeless people to congregate. That makes no sense. That's completely backwards. The only reason you would ever do that is because of greed.
I don't think it's necessarily that they don't feel safe talking to the homeless folks. I think it's going into these big, large camps. It's in the woods, in the middle of nowhere. It's kind of like with this guy that was over, again, on the Williamson Creek Greenbelt. His name was Rami or Ramey. He's the guy that had the chainsaw. Walking through the woods with a camera where this guy's out there with a chainsaw and you don't know where he's at. That's a little unnerving, And now the guy's in jail, so we went out and filmed. You got to see what this guy's done and how much wood he has cut. It is insane how much wood this guy's cut. Hands down. I've never seen anything like it.
And he's in jail.
Yeah, he's in jail. I think he was charged. I'm not sure exactly what he was charged with, but it stemmed from the city put rocks up around the Greenbelt to keep people from driving in.
Yeah.
And he just destroyed them.
Okay.
big boulders.
Did he get? What's his bail?
I have no clue.
And he's still in jail.
Yeah,
I'm
the
kind of
last
surprised.
I heard he was
I'm
still in
surprised
jail.
because I always figured Jose Garza would be the guy that just doesn't even give
Well,
the bail.
I think
or does the bail really low so people could just continue
it's
getting
not.
out?
It's not the bail. So I believe he was committed. He's got some mental issues. The reason he was cutting the trees is he's got some mental issues. I've known the guy, not known him, but I've seen him, talk to him probably 6-7 times over the last few months. And when he's on his medication, he's a pretty normal guy. But when he's off his medication, he thinks the devil lives in the trees, and so that's why he's cutting them down.
Oh.
But he's going into people's yards. He's going over their privacy fence into their yards and cutting their trees down too. So
People get shot for stuff like
that.
Yeah,
it's a pretty big deal. I mean, he was. There was also, and again, this is just something that I'd heard where I'd heard that he had actually tried to cut a lady with a machete. Again, that's just hearsay. I'm not 100% certain.
Could you imagine living in a house like
that butt up against it?
Yeah, no, like paying $10,000 plus a year in property taxes to live somewhere, and then for those $10,000 that you're paying, you have to worry about some deranged lunatic with a chainsaw going over your yard, chopping down your tree with no regard for what could happen if the tree falls. You're liable to pay for whatever damage ensues. And then let's say you work nights, or let's say you're alone and you have a wife and kids, and that person's doing that with your wife and kids. And then every time you call the police do nothing. And when you complain about this, you get gaslit by fake activists calling you a white supremacist or a racist, saying that you're anti-poverty.
Yeah.
I mean, this type of stuff drives people towards becoming right-wing extremists. It's totally mind-blowing and out of touch how people have acted and communicated regarding this.
Reddit is one of the most liberal places on the internet, I think. And r/Austin, you go on there, and I mean, you get a dose of reality. But even those folks on there and folks like apps like Nextdoor, they're pretty done with it. We find these posts and videos constantly of people that are just done with the issue. They're living next to these camps and they're done with it. My buddy Tim, he lives over by the Pack Saddle Camp, which is under 290 or Ben White.
Yeah.
His neighborhood, they have a ton of issues because Sunrise is right there, next to the Pack Saddle Camp. And, these people, they come out into the neighborhoods and they're causing all kinds of trouble. They're stealing, causing property damage.
You know what you got to do with this stuff is you got to find out where the director of Echo is.
Yeah.
You got to find you got to find the city council members. Their homes are public domain. The people who do canvassing, like the DSA, the people who are in the DSA that do canvassing for these types of causes. You got to use your money, get these homeless people, put them on a bus, and park them right next to those people's houses.
Not a bad idea, actually.
And just do what Ron DeSantis did with the migrants in Martha's Vineyard. Just go bring a bunch of bums into these people's homes and just
put them right on the front yard.
Put them right on the front yard. Just be like, hey, here, everybody gets whoever wants to go on this bus, we're giving each of you $50. Go to this person's house and do not leave.
So we made a map. I made a website called AustinHomelessMap.com.
Yeah.
And on the back end, I can go in and see what IP addresses are visiting that page, and I see, you can see where those IPs come from, and there's a lot of City of Austin IPs that are looking at it, and so they're very aware of what we're doing, and sometimes that doesn't make me feel very, very safe. No, I'm not safe.
Wait,
but I'm
do you
always
get
scared
backlash
they're gonna.
From activists?
No, well, yes, not recently. So the only time that we really got any huge backlash, it was Thanksgiving Day of last year. I had all my family over, and we got it was an Antifa group out of Washington D.C. that came after us that day. And
wait, like in person or on the internet?
On the internet.
Okay, for what? What was the reason for it?
They say that I'm putting the homeless in danger, with my map. At that point, I only had a
you have a
Google
map of where the homeless are and where the open air, where the
camps,
the hidden camps.
Yeah,
okay.
The big camps, off in the Greenbelts, and they. So back when I very first started with all of this, I just had a Google map that I made public. I didn't have an actual website until here recently, and so they say that I'm putting them in danger. That I'm, the standard. You're a righty, you're a fascist, you're a, basically everything but Hitler, death threats. It's the whole 9 yards. But it was odd because they came after us, and then all of a sudden it stopped. Overnight it stopped, and haven't heard another word from anybody. Since Thanksgiving Day of last year, I haven't received one threat. Kid you not.
So since Thanksgiving of 2021?
2022.
Okay,
yeah.
So this past Thanksgiving.
Yeah, and I haven't received another threat. I haven't, sometimes, I get nasty messages, but nothing that,
But it's not from people who are like formerly homeless. It's like trust fund kids that want to be.
Exactly.
It's trust fund kids that want to be revolutionaries.
Yeah, and what's funny is that most of the nasty messages, the threats that I've gotten, none of it came from Austin. It's all from outside of Austin. It's all from other states. I only really gotten maybe 2 or 3 negative messages from people here in Austin.
So what kind of threats, what was the diciest thing that's happening by you going into those camps?
So there was, I don't know if you know where Sam's Club is at up on 620 and 183. There's a Sam's Club up there.
I think I know what you're talking about.
And that's the area I live in up there. And there was a guy that was living in that parking lot, and a lady had contacted me on Twitter, asked me to go out there and document that, and I did. And about a week after I documented that and made it public, it got a lot of attention. The city went in and cleaned his camp out. There was, made him leave, basically.
All right.
So there was another camp over on Pecan Park. I had just taken Michelle Evans, which she was running for Senate. Okay. I'd just taken her out to see that park. This was before the election. And I thought that camp was empty. But it changes. Like I said, from week to week, all these camps change. So, we have to visit. I visit these same camps week after week. We just keep going back. And I went back to the Pecan Park camp, and the guy was there from Sam's Club. And he knew, he saw me with a camera. He knew that I was filming the one at Sam's Club. And he remembered me, and he came at me with a piece of rebar that night. And he chased me pretty much back down Pecan Park. It was pretty scary.
With like a club or with a
big old
pipe?
Piece of rebar. Iron, big, chunk of iron. Yeah.
Was there anybody else with you, or was it just you?
No, it was just me.
You weren't with Michelle, were you?
No. That was a camp that I'd visited like a week before with Michelle.
Question, and you don't have to answer. Do you carry when you go to these things?
I do. Yeah.
You don't obviously want to do anything like that, but
I didn't even think about it. I know it. A lot of people say that they talk a big game about carrying a gun, but when something actually happens, it's kind of hard to. When somebody comes out of the woods and you're not expecting it, and they're 5 feet from you with a piece of rebar,
you want to run away. You want to run away anyway. And besides, you shooting a homeless guy when you're trying to document and help people,
so
that's a PR nightmare, and that will set back a lot of the work you're doing as well. You know what I mean? So it's kind of one of those things where you're going in there trying to be as non-confrontational as possible.
I carried more. I don't carry as much anymore. Now that I have people like Tim and Clint and Christina that go out with me, that I have people with me, I don't carry as much anymore.
Well, because there's a group of people and it's
I carried for sure when I was by myself.
Yeah. So I have a question though. What happened to the guy who chased you? Did they arrest him?
I have no clue.
Well, because you had it on camera, right?
Yeah, but you
didn't show it to the police. You didn't show it.
Nope.
You didn't put it on your social media.
Yeah, I put it on social media.
And nothing ever happened from that. Like that's wild.
No. Nothing ever happened, and nothing will. I mean, we it's kind of like with the dog attack. We had that on video too.
You can't do much of anything. You just bring awareness.
Yeah, nobody does anything about it.
Yeah, I mean, I could see people just like, I could see it creating anti-homelessness, but at the end of the day, it's like if you're just if you're documenting what you see, people are just going to have an opinion based on what's in front of them.
The camps that are dangerous, I feel it's important that the public knows these camps that are dangerous, that they could literally get hurt in. Especially on public trails and the Greenbelts, it's smart to let people know.
It is smart, but the problem is if they're always moving, that might not even be an accurate map. Like you got to update it every 2 days anyway.
Yeah, and that's the problem.
So somebody could look at that map and get the wrong info, and then get hurt because they got the wrong info anyway.
That's the problem with the map, is it takes so much to update. So if you go to austinhomelessmaps.com and you look at the map, you'll see the main large camps like that are established, that are on the Greenbelts. The smaller camps, you would have to visit almost daily to keep it updated.
Yeah.
And we not only do we have, pictures of the camps on there, but kind of an inventory of things. And so, yeah, on that map, you only see the large camps that we visit, every week or every 2 weeks.
Okay.
That they don't change much. It's the smaller camps around town. They're constantly changing. It's kind of like down on Pack Saddle, down on Ben White and Pack Saddle. There's a Randall's right there and a Target. That area is normally cleaned once a week by the state of Texas, not the city, but by the state. They actually go in there and they do a really good job of keeping that area clean. And it hasn't been cleaned in a couple of weeks. So if you drive down that area right now, it's kind of shocking to see it. With the number of people that are living there, not only the number of people, but just the amount of trash, you can smell it from the street. It's pretty nasty. It's not, I can't imagine living. When I was homeless here, I slept over next to the Capitol. There's a church over there.
So how did you wind up being homeless, though? That's...
it was just getting away from just everyday life. It just, you go through a divorce and kind of, I'm 43 now. So at that point I was like 30. When I came down, I was like 33.
Okay.
And, it was just change. It was getting away. It was, a lot of problems. Going through divorce, it really sucks, man.
Was it like a substance? Did you have like a substance issue, or did you
No,
just like
not at that point.
Did you blow a bunch of money and as a result of it, as a result of what happened, or did you just kind of like not want to buy? You just didn't feel like living in a house, so you just decided to just not get a house for a little.
Well, it was more of just tired of, when you spend, you have to sell your house and you have to split everything, and it's more of, I don't want to call it a midlife crisis so much, but more of a, I'm just tired of living this way. And so like Austin was, again, it's just why people come here now.
You just wanted to hit the reset button?
Well, it's that, but Austin is known to be, the nice laid back hippie town, so to speak.
Yeah, but you can move to Austin and just get a little apartment and pay $600 a month at the time.
It's tough, man.
Homeless.
When you're but like I said, my situation was a lot different. I didn't live like most of these guys that are living right now. I worked every day, and I slept at that church at night. There was no camps, there was no tents, there was no, leaving garbage everywhere. The reason the church let us stay there at that point is because we were gone before they got there, and we didn't leave a trace that we were there.
Okay.
We would pick up our trash every night. It would go to the garbage. There was a bus stop right there on the corner. And, we didn't leave a trace that we were there. So the church never, there's a little, like where the Capitol's at, I believe it's a Methodist church. If there's a little side entrance that's that the porch is kind of, it has these little concrete walls, and that's me and a guy from Haiti. I'm not sure, he had just gotten here from Haiti. He was illegal. We slept right there for several months. It wasn't bad. It wasn't a bad way to live, honestly.
Okay.
It's
interesting.
Yeah, and I met my wife at Randall's, and that's pretty much it. Like, it was pretty much over after that.
So what do you do for work now?
I'm an engineer for HughesNet.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what I do mainly. Right now I'm trying to transition out of that. So I split my time between that and working. We've established a company called Dash. We have several people. Tim, is helping now, and Clint and Christina, and
you guys are getting money. You're getting some attention. So
yeah, we're taking in donations. We're taking in a little bit of donations. We have a sponsor now, Balcones Roofing.
Oh, I heard about. Okay.
And that guy is he's a very, the guy is passionate about this issue, and so he's sponsoring us right now at this point. So for the rest of the year, any roof that's done inside of Austin, he is donating the proceeds to that directly to us. So, that's pretty much how we keep going right now. That's pretty much how we are doing everything.
Balcones Roofing. Interesting.
Balcones Roofing. That's it. Yep. So you can find them on.
Yeah, and then that helps you. You could use that money and, help feed some of these people. So one time, when they first got rid of the ban, I had a friend of mine that did like a fake MTV Cribs episode for the homeless.
Okay.
And we did it right on like 7th and 35.
Okay. Used to be a bad area.
Yeah, we did it right there. It was about 2019 we did it.
Yeah.
Or late 2019, I think.
Yeah.
Or early 2020, pre-COVID. And we bought them beer and like cigarettes, and we just hung for like an hour and a half or 2 hours. we like drank. I mean, I didn't get like drunk, but like
Yeah.
we definitely drank and hang out with them and like maybe bought them pizza or something like that before we even started filming them.
Yeah.
And talked to them for like an hour or two.
Yeah.
And we're like, and basically by the time we were done,
TV cribs.
we told them what we wanted to do. They were fighting with each other over whose tent they wanted us to use.
No kidding.
Yeah.
You know, there's a lot of good people that live here and that are on the street. There's a lot of, you know, really, there's a lot of good people. I thought Henry was a good guy. I'm not going to take up for him because I don't know if he really
everyone's
robbed a guy,
here's
but,
the thing. Here's the thing though, right? Like if you're going to panhandle for money and you're going to be out on the street, there has to be a way, like, and if you're going to make money doing this, you have to have a good disposition.
Yeah.
The ones who have bad dispositions don't make money doing this.
Yeah, and you know, that's a good point. I've never really looked at it that way, but you're right.
Just like with our job doing this job, right?
Yeah.
Like I don't think we should compare ourselves to the homeless.
No.
But the people who do this job that make the most money have the best dispositions
And the good personalities.
Yeah, they have good personalities.
Yeah.
But at the same time, though, I've been doing this job for 9 years.
Right.
I don't think there's really maybe like aside from like one or two people in this community who I actually feel as though I know on a deep level.
Right. That makes sense. Yeah.
You know? So I know next to nothing about 95% of the people that I've done this job with.
Yeah.
And I've been doing this job with some of these people for years.
Right.
And I think there's probably some similarities.
A lot of people in and out.
Well, there's that, but it's also, you know, you have a job, you have a disposition, you have a way of communicating that makes people that attracts people. And if you get those skill sets, sometimes people could think you're like a good guy when you might not be. And sometimes you might not have those skills and people might think that you're a bad guy when you're in fact like a really good human being.
Right.
So I think that there's a lot of that kind of is something that you could notice, right?
There's a lot of people that's stuck in a bad. So the way it's been explained to me is when you actually get on the street, when you're living in a homeless camp, it's kind of like getting in a hole and you can't get yourself out. It's like, okay, I've got marketable skills that I could go to work, but where am I going to sleep at night and get ready to go to work the next day? You know, how am I going to, there's so many barriers, and that's where places like, you know, the Salvation Army, where they have that big shelter.
Hey, Jamie, stop for a second.
Yeah.
Not to interrupt. So when I first moved to Austin, after my first year, I wanted to be a school teacher. That didn't really work out. But like, so my first year after, like, the things I wanted to do didn't necessarily work, and I was like really stuck with like, you know, $7,000 of credit card debt and like only a few $100. I wasn't sure if I was going to even pay my rent. I started doing these like paid medical studies.
That's scary.
Yeah, I mean, and I'm like, you know, and I'm, you know, super against a lot of these like these forced shots and whatnot. But
did you make money doing that? I mean,
yes, that's what I'm trying to tell you. Like I did there was this group called PPD.
Yeah.
In Austin,
and
they were paying people like thousands of dollars a pop to like be in a facility for like a few days, you know, to take a certain medication for certain things, and you could like ask what the medication's for, if it's FDA approved, what it does, XYZ, right? And if you get into the study and you follow the rules, which is basically, you know, get your blood drawn when they tell you to get your blood drawn, and go eat when you're supposed to eat, because everything has to be monitored on an exact time frame, you know, and take the dose when they tell you to take the dose, which is like once, to just see if like it doesn't have any crazy reactions. You'll get like thousands of dollars just from being in this study. And so like, unless like, you know, you got HIV or you got like or unless you're like a full blown drug addict, or you're like a chain smoker who can't quit smoking cigarettes because they won't let you do it if you smoke cigarettes. But like, if you just can pass a drug test and you don't have HIV or have any like irreversible communicable diseases, you could get into one of these studies, make thousands of dollars, and then just say, okay, well, now I got $3,000 in my bank account. Let me go.
That's going to be hard for a lot of these people because of the drugs.
Yeah, and
most of these people are on drugs and cigarettes.
And a lot of people also have HIV, and there's a lot of that.
I've got an interview that we did, I think it was probably about a month and a half ago now, with a guy back on Pack Saddle, HIV positive guy. And you know, we talked to him about that kind of in depth. And and so yeah, most of these guys have a lot of issues, and
I think something like getting HIV would drive you to would drive you to addiction.
I can imagine.
Too. Because you get a disease like that, like it's done.
Yeah, and especially once you're on the street, I've heard, and I don't know if this is a fact, but the drugs that you take for HIV to keep you well are extremely expensive. And with this guy, he's not taking any of the medications. So, I mean, what do? You look, if it was me, I would have a hard time not losing hope, to be honest.
It's really difficult. I mean, I wouldn't know what to do. I think what you do is you educate the next generation so that they just grow up and don't make those choices.
Right. And, it's most of these people that are on the street right now, they don't want help. There's a lot of people out there that they're happy right where they're at. They're happy living in the Greenbelts on a tent with no responsibilities, and that's just right where they want to be. So I get asked that question.
Are they actually happy, or are they just, or are they just giving up?
Nope, they're happy. They're right where they want to be. They're doing drugs. They're whatever it is that they're into, and they have no responsibilities. They have no 9-to-5 job that they've got to get up for. They're right where they want to be.
Are they actually happy though, or are they? That
seems
like
happy.
That just sounds like I've given up, and this is just what I'm gonna do forever. Because I don't see the point in doing anything else.
I don't know if it's given up or if they're happy. I couldn't answer that question. They seem to be pretty happy.
Well, yeah. If you're taking mind-numbing substances all the time, you're gonna be happy because you're under the influence of that substance. But when you're not on that substance, you're not going to be happy because you're immediately trying to use that other substance, or you wouldn't need to use that substance.
That's where the housing problem comes in. Is these people they're addicted to drugs and they're back on the streets seeking the drugs. There's rules, and I would imagine you can't smoke meth in the homeless hotel.
Yeah,
meth is a big problem here in Austin in the homeless community. You see on the places like San Francisco where they've got a huge fentanyl problem, and it's not a big problem here. Meth is the big problem here. A lot of meth use. Lots of meth use. And weed, but weed's not a problem.
It's not even a real drug. I have friends that had opiate addictions and had a bunch of problems like that, and weed helped them quit.
Yeah, opioids are.
Yeah, you know what I mean. So when people talk about when people start conflating weed with these other drugs, it's the most out of touch, tone deaf shit in the world. It's not.
You can't compare them, and that's another thing. I mean, we'll probably see weed legalized here in Texas,
which is a good thing.
Within the next couple of years. Yeah,
I think that's a good thing. I think the only problem is that you might start getting cops that start using it to give DWIs more frequently.
I'm not so sure that doesn't happen now, to be honest.
No, but with the weed, right?
Right. Oh, I see. Yeah.
Because you're technically impaired if you're high.
Yeah.
But if I smoke a bowl and start driving my car, no one's gonna give me a breathalyzer to see if I'm smoking weed. But if weed's legal, I could see, that being abused, and a cop could just say, "Hey, man, let me see if we got THC in your system, and it's in your system 30 days, and they could I could see funny business getting implemented as a result of that. So there probably should be something to consider.
I've heard stories. I don't smoke weed myself, but I've heard people that get pulled over. They don't want the ticket, for the little bit of personal use weed they have, so they tell the cop that it's CBD.
Yeah.
And you can go in and buy joints in the gas stations. I mean, it smells just like. I mean, it's crazy. So and most cops, from what I hear, will just they're not going to spend the money.
I had a friend who I pedicab with, and he spent his birthday weekend in jail because they found a blunt in his car.
Was it CBD?
No, it was weed. It was actual weed, and he was it was in his glove compartment or something like that, and he had to pull it out. That was where his driver's license was, or his passport was.
Oh no!
And the guy saw the joint. It was in the middle of it was in Temple, Texas, or some small bumblefuck town, and he he didn't have license plate. He had the paper plates.
Yeah.
So it just was a disaster.
Back when I was with the sheriff's department, you'd go to jail for just a little bit of weed. Yeah, if any weed was found in your car, it was.
Did you actually take people to jail for that, or were you I
worked mainly in the jail. Yeah.
So you worked in the jail.
Yeah, booking.
So you weren't, but you weren't the cop pulling people over, sending people to jail because they had a joint on them, were you?
No. That wasn't me. No. I even back then it was, I was young, and when you're young, you do stupid things, and no, I worked more in booking. You know, the cops that particular cop you're talking about, when they brought the guy in.
Yeah.
You know, and you got to do the fingerprints and the pictures and all that good stuff. So
I feel like if I'm a cop busting people for that, like, I don't know. I feel like with the culture of things right now, it's almost like you're gonna get made fun of by your coworkers because you took someone to jail for something that stupid.
I can see that. I mean, like, most cops aren't messing with weed anymore.
Yeah, I'm like, we're doing this, really.
I mean, there's a lot more drugs out there. That's a huge.
We're in the
problem.
in the 1980s now. Like, what are you doing?
Well, and you know, the 80s they put you in prison for it.
Yeah, I don't think they put you in prison for like smoking a joint though, right?
I don't know. Yeah, they might back then.
I think depending on where you were, there was a lot of.
Yeah, I mean, you know, I grew up in a little town, and I didn't grow up around drugs. We didn't really have. It was alcohol. That was the big thing where I grew up, and so it you know, once I went to McKinney, and McKinney, that's I spent my last 2 years in high school there. It was a culture shock, man. When going around, you know, there's a lot of weed, and I didn't know what to do. So yeah, it was a lot of fun though.
Yeah,
it's a whole lot of fun.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, but at some point you got to grow up, right? So
yeah, at some point, all right.
Yeah, and so I don't know, you know, these people that are living on the street here, like I said, there's a lot of good people, a lot of people that, you know, they have personalities that I like, that we get along with, and we don't have too much trouble. And I think a lot of the reason is because, for one, we if it's a camp that we think is going to be dangerous, we will go in and start talking to them before we bring out the cameras and make sure they're okay with it. If you just whip out a camera on anybody, that could
people get really mad.
Yeah,
no, people get pissed off.
It could bring out a violent reaction.
Yeah.
But, you know, and again, we're not here to shame anybody. You know,
so no, and you don't need to. I think generally you give what you get. Like, you receive what you get what you put in.
We're trying our best to help people.
You get what you put in. I think that, like, if you're respectful to the people that are there, and you also, like, show that you're not afraid of them,
right?
Then, you know, more often than not, you'll be treated with respect by most of the people here.
For sure.
And then, like, if one person decides to act up and everybody else likes you, it'll usually get diffused by the other homeless people.
Well, and you know,
do you know what I mean? Like, do you know what I mean?
There's a communication channel in the homeless community, and so you kind of, you know, once you've been around it enough, you're kind of known in that community. You know, I mean, people kind of know who you are, but there's so many new people in and out all the time. It's, you know, like I said, down on the Williamson Creek Greenbelt, those people know who we are. It's the younger guys that are more violent. You know, in particular, the Williamson Creek Greenbelt, I've got this video on my YouTube as well where everything was cool. We know all the people down there. Everybody's fine with us being down there. We try to help them as much as possible. But there's a young guy in a camp, and, you know, he's threatening to take my camera from me. And this was like, I don't know, 2 weeks ago. It wasn't very long ago.
Yeah.
And I didn't know what to do because I was by myself. Tim and Christina, they had walked on up the trail, so I was kind of alone. I didn't know what to do but just keep walking.
Well, you can't do anything because it's a difficult situation.
It's a very difficult situation.
Because you're a content creator. You want people to trust you.
Yeah, for sure.
And, you know, if you lived amongst these people and this is your community, you have to, like, it probably feels like it's almost like a jail system. Where it's like, all right, you know, you don't want to be seen as weak, so you have to just show people that you don't want to get met. Like,
so it's kind of interesting that you bring that up, because that, I think, is a lot of the problem with the shelters, is because if you look at the way, like the Arch, the Salvation Army, the way their shelters are set up, it's kind of the dormitory style, which is just like jail. And these guys that have spent time in prison, they will not go and stay in those places because it's so much like jail. You know, they just will not stay in there. It's because of that reason. It's set up just like a jail.
Well, so is there like a hierarchy of homelessness?
I don't know. That's a good question.
Like in the homeless community, are there any like people who are like popular in the homeless community? Like, is there like, I mean, like if you're involved in the community, is there like one homeless guy that everyone in the community knows?
So, I think if there is something like that, it's per camp, like the camp that we were at last week, you know, that we thought we were going to get robbed going into. There was one particular guy that seemed to be running everything. You know, there was one particular guy that was talking to us, one particular guy that was, you know, walking with us and walked us through the camp and, so on and so forth. Now, I don't know if in the city, if there's like King Homeless guy that ever, very popular, everybody knows. I don't really know, to be honest.
Or is there like some drug dealer or some like gangster?
I would imagine.
Or are there like, do you see cartel influences in Austin with the homeless stuff that you're documenting? Like, I'm just wondering,
I haven't
what do
seen
you
it.
see?
No.
Like,
and of course, we don't ever see a whole lot of the drug stuff because we have the cameras, and that's,
they're not going to do
they're
that.
not going
to do that on camera.
You're not gonna get any of that kind of. I mean, they're not gonna hide the fact that they're doing drugs. I mean, it's kind of obvious, but they're not gonna talk about where they're getting it, or
That's something you'd almost have to do with like a hidden camera where you have
For
like
sure.
a pen or something, and you got to be Project Veritas.
Wouldn't be hard to do.
Like that. No, I don't think
Wouldn't
so.
be hard to do at all.
I just think that if you do that once, then your relationship with them is done.
Well, again,
You know what I mean? Like, then
you
the
build a
relationship
reputation in the homeless community, and if it's probably not going to go well for you if you're snitching people.
Yeah, if you do stuff like that, I mean, look, if you have your own house and you have your own life, their problems are not really your problem.
Exactly.
Are not really your problems, but guess what?
That-
Like, you're never going to be in their they'll never let you in that world again for you to actually document or actually help or do anything positive if you do any of that.
So that's
if that makes sense.
That's the oddest thing. It's so, like I said, I have a wife and I have 2 children now, and my children are, of course, just to every parent, they're everything, and it's hard to not get so emotionally involved in these people's lives that it affects your life at home. Like on Thanksgiving, when we're having Thanksgiving dinner, and it bums you out because you have friends that are on the street that are not having dinner with their family. It's hard to keep that separation. Very hard.
Are there homeless people who get like preyed upon by other homeless people?
For sure. Yeah.
Well, how does that work? Like, what happens?
Like I said, I'm not the biggest expert on how these groups run and how these camps run. I wished I were, but I would imagine that happens pretty much all the time. Yeah.
Okay. I mean, because it seems interesting. Like, one of the things I talked about, and we're gonna probably wrap up soon, but
sure.
So we're wrapping up right now.
You want to wrap up?
All right. Tim, Jamie, how do we get a hold of you?
You can find me on Twitter at documenting ATX. That's my Twitter handle. YouTube at documenting Austin. It's youtube.com/@documenting-Austin, and -atx.org.
Excellent. Then no Instagram yet?
No Instagram.
You need to get an Instagram.
I do.
With,
I've been thinking about it. I've made the account. I just haven't, done anything with it. So, just like TikTok, I did that just on a.
I got rid of
whim.
I got rid of my TikTok. Anyway,
Got a lot of views on TikTok.
Thank you so much for coming on.
Not a problem. Appreciate it, buddy.